Hello and welcome back. In today's video we're going to reflect on a recent issue I've discovered with my aircraft, some assumptions I was holding on to which led to confirmation bias, which could also have led to a problematic situation. For those who don't know, I am a low-time pilot who's purchased a Cessna 150 back in October 2023. I've only trained on Cessna 172s and my current aircraft is the only Cessna 150 I've had experience with. That point will become more important later. As I gained experience with my aircraft, I understood I had to relearn some behaviors and quirks of the Cessna 150. So some of the symptoms we'll review in this video were mislearned as being just the quirks of a Cessna 150. So for today, we're going to look over a quick overview of the symptoms. Why did I ignore them? How biases are formed, even when you're seeking out help or doing research. What should I have done earlier? And lessons for the next time and takeaways. Enjoy! Okay, so the first problem was the aircraft when it would take off for the first time. The first takeoff would always be a little sluggish.
Let's see if she performs better on the second time. That's usually the quirk of this plane. Her first takeoff is always kind of sluggish. Second one, nice and strong.
And then the following takeoffs would be fine. So I just assumed that was the engine needing to warm up and everything expanding and so on. After all, when I did buy it, it did have a fresh annual, so everything should have been fine. So that was a bias for me.
Baby climb.
And now we're reaching a point where the bias is kind of getting dangerous. So in this takeoff here, the RPM dropped down to 2400. It was a very hot day and there were thermals and downdrafts, so my takeoff performance was expected to be weak. So as I was taking off with weak performance, I just kind of assumed that it was the density altitude and the maybe a downdraft that was bringing me down. I did hear the RPM drop a little bit. And, I felt like, this could be a moment. However, the bias was still so strong that I thought, okay, on the second takeoff, it'll probably be fine. So after I landed, I did a full static RPM again, and I got the desired RPM, took off, and the second takeoff was stronger. So again, reconfirming the bias. But at that point, I was considering, okay, maybe it's time to take the plane to the mechanic.
Clear prep!
Okay, this one's annoying, and it's really hard to watch, especially people who are concerned for my starter. The plane's always been kind of crappy at starting, and again, it's one of those things that I thought was okay because the plane's been annualed, and we didn't catch it when we did the pre-buy because weirdly enough, the very first start of the day, the plane started okay. A little hesitant, but still good. And it would be after I'd taxi to the fuel pumps or something, or run the engine, that it was really difficult to start. And then it just kind of got a little worse and worse, where even the first start of the day was getting bad. So I didn't really go to my mechanic for that. Weirdly, I just kind of thought that was normal until I was seeing other videos about Cessna 150 starting, or anything with a Continental 0200, and I was starting to think, of course I asked for advice online and say, hey, what am I doing wrong here? I even asked some other pilots, and everyone just kind of thought I was flooding the engine. So I was. So I kind of adjusted my starting technique, and it did start a little better, but it was never cranking over the way I'd see others. So that was a huge signal for my mechanic when he tried to start the engine.
Yeah, so you probably haven't seen any videos from me lately because I haven't been doing anything interesting. The plane, I haven't been flying as much in July as I hoped. Right in the beginning of July, I took the plane into Chris's shop, and just for like that strange quirk of having less power on the first takeoff. But one of the other things he noticed was how difficult the plane was to start. But when he tried to start it, he noticed that was like the most difficult starting of a 150 he's ever seen. And we looked over the spark plugs, the wires, compression, a whole bunch of stuff, and he's used his best educated guess, or his intuition and experience, to recommend that the magnetos get rebuilt, and he felt bad with that recommendation because it's $1,500 per mag to send out. So we did that, and wow, okay, so the magnetos definitely needed some parts changed. They did an inspection and repairs necessary on the magnetos. Bearings were changed, the points. Those contacts on that plastic gear have been changed. Those were pretty eroded away from arcing. And what else? The impulse couplers, the springs. it was a big job. I think the only things that they didn't change was like the condenser, or so now the plane starts amazingly. I gained 200 RPM on takeoff, so I feel a lot more secure that way. So like the whole time I was flying this plane, I was flying with bag magnetos and a weaker engine, and I had no frame of reference because I've never flown a 150 before. So it's like you don't know what you don't know, and you look for advice or whatever. But the common knowledge is that the 150, of course, is an underpowered aircraft. It's only 100 horsepower, so it's going to feel weak and sluggish. Of course, that's what I'm feeling, but I don't know relative to what it's supposed to be. Now I do. So I guess one lesson learned was I should have either found a way to bring an instructor so they would know, or lend the plane to a commercial pilot who's had experience, and loan the plane to like someone who's flown a 150 and see what they think, or
like Cisco Area 182.
Yeah, so that they could tell me if it felt weak or whatever. Or I should have rented another 150 to see what it felt like. But yeah. From my understanding, the static RPM was within the POH, and because it was doing 2,500, but I shouldn't have ignored the other symptoms, such as the change in power after the first takeoff, and the difficulty to start. Your traffic list 150, call P4 Victor Hotel, currently 2,400, heading north, crossing Kempenfeld Bay, will be switching to en route frequency, last call P4 Victor Hotel.
Okay, at this point I changed the en route frequency, and it was so jammed that every time I tried to talk commentary, I would just have to stop after like the first two words. So instead of making this look like a crazy blooper reel, we're just going to skip right ahead and review the post-maintenance, post-repair test flight.
Clear prep! Haha, yeah! That was the easiest start ever. Holy 50, 55, 60, rotate. Oh my god, even at this high density altitude, it's climbing higher, faster than normal. There's less vibration, it's much smoother. Climbing is difficult because, the density altitude is way up there today, and we don't have any headwinds. Primer lock, master ignition on both, curb. Get the curb heat in a second. Curb heat, make sure it's tanks, temperatures and pressure's good. I think I'm only going to do the one circuit because that was scary how slow we climbed, even though we had 200 more, almost 200 more RPM on the climb. Yeah, the engine feels great. Money well spent. Email traffic, call Uniform Victor Hotel, turning final 31 full stop. Email traffic, Charlie Sir Hotel, we're rolling 26. I have you in sight, Cessna 150, and I'll be along out of your way. We're departing 26. Well, that was fantastic. I've never seen that much RPM before with this engine running. Another notable thing is how smooth the engine feels. The plane doesn't have those vibrations that it's used to. I just kind of felt like it was old engine vibration. It felt similar to flight school, I guess. And maybe I got used to this plane, and maybe those were the little quirks that I was ignoring that my gut was making me feel a little uneasy about this. Really glad I spent the money on getting those mags rebuilt. That was a great recommendation from my mechanic, and I'm excited to fly on a nicer day to actually enjoy flying again with a little less nerves.
Okay, now that we looked over everything, let's talk about the key takeaways. So the first one I have is don't assume you know what the engine is doing and rationalize it away. Even though I feel like I've had a decent mechanical background, I'm not a trained mechanic and especially new to airplanes themselves. So, try to get more information. Talk to pilots, talk to mechanics, ask them about their planes, talk about yours and its quirks. Another point is perception is subjective. Although my plane was sluggish, I was still hearing, oh yeah, Cessna 150s, they're a little weaker, they'll take longer to climb, in the heat they're going to be more sensitive to density altitude, so everything about my plane still fit the description of what to expect flying a Cessna 150. However, I didn't have a good baseline to compare that to a normal Cessna 150, as this was the only 150 I had experience in. I did fly a Cessna 152 once for like an hour, but again, even the 152 has more horsepower than a 150, so I was expecting a bit of a difference there. And third, listen to your gut. The plane was harder to start than a 172, but from time to time, even a 172 was hard to start. So I kind of rationalized the concern away. I'm like, oh, I guess a 150 is probably harder to start. Again, this goes back to not having a baseline of like how other 150s behaved. Another point is I should have talked to my mechanic sooner. Sometimes I didn't feel like bugging them about simple questions like, why am I having a difficult time starting? And then, being worried about, maybe I'm just flooding it or whatever, and I have to learn how to start it better or get to learn it. And another point is get time with the same type of aircraft, but with a different aircraft. So like rent a Cessna 150, compare it to how it behaves to mine. Get to know if the plane is consistent or inconsistent with another. That's what I've learned with this, and I'd like to share, and hopefully you found it interesting or entertaining. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.